There is a clay tablet sitting in a museum right now that describes, in specific and recoverable detail, exactly what happens to human consciousness after death.
Imagine a record carved in clay over 6,000 years ago that maps out not just death, but what happens to us afterward, down to the smallest detail. What if the soul's journey is not a mysterious transition, but a carefully engineered process, designed by beings whose knowledge far surpasses our own? This ancient blueprint reveals a fate few have considered, a cycle where human consciousness is recycled into new lives without memories of what came before. Could it be that what we think of as life and death is actually a system meant to keep us trapped, unaware and endlessly repeating? The soul's journey revealed. Ancient texts rarely speak with such precision about what happens after death as the Sumerian tablet in question does. It does not describe death as a simple finality, but instead presents it as a detailed, multi-stage journey involving gatekeepers and a destination. This process is not spiritual fluff or myth wrapped in metaphor. It's described with such specificity that it invites a startling question. How could anyone in 3000 BCE have known this unless they had witnessed it? The tablet insists that death is a transition, a complex system with rules and stages that the human soul must pass through. What makes this revelation shocking is its implication that after death, human souls face a mechanism carefully designed to erase their memories and identities before returning them to new bodies. This means the soul's journey is less about rest or reward and more about recycling, a cycle that runs quietly in the background of our existence. The Sumerians called this mechanism the fate that was designed for humanity, emphasizing that it was not a natural occurrence, but something intentionally constructed. The notion of a soul trapped in a cyclical process, stripped continuously of self-awareness, challenges much of what modern culture assumes about life and death. Many scholars have avoided acknowledging this topic outright, largely dismissing the texts as mythological or symbolic stories from a primitive past. But when such assumptions are set aside, the tablet reveals a startling worldview. It suggests the afterlife is less a paradise or abyss, and more a functional processing system where souls become unaware participants in their own recycling. The text draws no comforting pictures. It describes a system that operates independently of human consent or understanding. Death, therefore, is not an end, but a reset. Even more unsettling is the idea that the souls passing through this system are not fully aware of their situation. They exist in a kind of limbo, aware to an extent, but largely without recognition of their true state. This condition traps souls in cycles of rebirth without any memory of what came before or the knowledge that an alternative exists. The tablet's ancient authors framed this situation not as a spiritual failing or cosmic punishment, but as a designed feature of humanity's fate. The mystery, then, centers on why such a system exists and what it means for the essence of self. The concept of a multi-stage transition involving gates and administrators hints at a sophisticated infrastructure for managing souls after death. Each stage seemingly strips away parts of the individual's consciousness, identity, and memories. The dead arrive not at a single final destination, but at an elaborate place with walls, gates, and overseers who enforce this process. This isn't heaven or hell in the traditional sense. It is described as a realm called Kur, the Great Below. It operates almost like a holding area where souls are methodically dismantled and prepared for their next incarnation. This raises an important question. Who designed such a system and why? The tablet does not leave this unanswered, attributing the entire process to beings called the Anunnaki, figures repeatedly referenced in Sumerian texts as creators and overseers of humanity. According to the tablets, these advanced beings engineered not only the physical forms of humans, but also the soul's cyclical journey. This idea adds a layer of complexity that extends beyond spirituality into the realm of intentional design and control. It implies a purpose behind human creation that echoes into the afterlife itself. While the exact nature of what the soul's experience in Kur remains partly hidden behind layers of ancient language and symbolism, the tablet's message is clear. Death feeds into a system designed to maintain control over the living workers it created. Souls are processed, stripped, and returned without memory or freedom to resist. The full meaning of this system and its broader implications will become clearer as we explore deeper layers of Sumerian cosmology and their understanding of human nature. Understanding this basic framework opens the door to a profound re-evaluation of human existence. The soul's so-called journey after death appears less like a passage to a final resting place and more like an engineered cycle of recycling. Rather than escape or enlightenment, it presents a trap, one that most souls do not even realize they are caught in. The revelation is unsettling but essential for grasping what the tablet truly unveils about death and what lies beyond. The story of human design by the Anunnaki reveals even more about the origins of this soul recycling system, the origins of human design. The Sumerians had a radical explanation for where their profound knowledge came from. Beings known as the Anunnaki, who descended from the heavens to earth. These were not mere gods in a spiritual sense, but advanced physical entities capable of technology and genetic manipulation far beyond the reach of ordinary humans. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth long before humanity existed, embarking on extensive mining operations, primarily to extract gold for reasons partially lost to time, but potentially linked to their own survival or technology. Faced with exhausting manual labor and growing unrest among lower-ranking workers, the Anunnaki's solution was to engineer a new worker, an entity that would shoulder the burdens of mining and other tasks without complaint. This entity, called the Lulu or the Mixed One, was created by blending Anunnaki genetic material with that of indigenous beings already inhabiting Earth. This act can be understood as an early form of genetic engineering, placing the creation of humanity firmly in a framework of intentional design rather than random evolution. This narrative appears across many cultures and texts. Echoes of it surface in Genesis, Vedic scriptures, the Book of Enoch, and countless oral traditions scattered across the ancient world. What makes the Sumerian tablets unique is their level of technical specificity. Unlike later mythologies, these tablets describe the process in terms that resemble modern science, including the engineering of the soul as a design component integrated into human beings. This challenges the idea that ancient stories of gods creating humans were purely metaphorical. The soul, as part of this design, is not a divine mystery or an ethereal spirit, but a functional aspect of the engineered individual. The Sumerians believed human beings were complex composites made of distinct layers, not just a body and a soul, but multiple separate elements that behaved independently. This complex design was intentional, allowing for mechanisms like the soul recycling system to operate effectively, all controlled by the Anunnaki hierarchy. One of the most significant figures in this framework is Enki, the Anunnaki leader known as a genetic engineer and protector of humanity. Enki is credited in these texts with guarding the me, which represents the fundamental attributes or programs governing existence, including death itself. His symbol, intriguingly, is the double helix, remarkably similar to modern depictions of DNA. Such details hint at a deep intertwining of biological engineering and spiritual mechanics encoded within these ancient writings. The implication is clear. Not only was the human body created by an external intelligence, but the process governing the soul's fate after death was also deliberately installed as part of this grand design. The recycling system described in the tablets was not an afterthought or accidental byproduct of nature. It was engineered to serve specific purposes. This changes the entire meaning of human existence, from accidental evolution to crafted labor. Recognizing the origins of human design in the Anunnaki's intervention sets the stage to understand how the layers of human existence function in this engineered system. Layers of human existence. The Sumerians viewed the human being as far more than a simple body with a soul. They described a composite entity formed of multiple distinct parts. The physical body, called the Balag, was fashioned from clay, a mixture of earth and divine blood, as explicitly stated in their creation myths. This physical form was mortal, destined to return to the earth upon death. But the Balag was only one layer of the human makeup, and the soul itself had several components with different fates. One of these components is the Giddim, often translated as ghost or shade, which is the aspect believed to survive physical death. Unlike our modern concept of a soul, the Giddim is subject to the system outlined in the tablets, a journey to Kur, the underworld, where souls are held, judged, and processed. This survivable consciousness is not free or enlightened, but exists within a controlled environment where awareness is diminished and memory gradually stripped away. Another critical term is me, which appears repeatedly in Sumerian texts, though it defies easy translation. The me encompasses divine attributes or fundamental principles governing gods, humans, and the cosmos. Importantly, the me were treated as tangible objects, capable of being held, taken, or controlled, revealing that spiritual powers were viewed through an operational lens. Enki was said to possess mastery over all me, including the most crucial, the me of death. In this cosmology, death was not a natural event, but a system, an engineered process with explicit rules and mechanics. The Descent of Inanna, one of the oldest written stories, offers a vivid portrayal of this system in action. Inanna's journey through the underworld involves passing 7 gates, each stripping away layers of her identity, power, and memory. Far from being a simple myth, the text can be read as a precise manual describing how souls lose what makes them themselves. This staged removal of clothing, jewelry, and symbols in the story reflects a dismantling of consciousness, not just physical possessions. Each gate removes a piece of memory, self-awareness, or individuality, preparing the soul for the final stage where it arrives naked, stripped of its former identity, and thus vulnerable to being recycled without resistance. This process mirrors similar accounts found in other ancient traditions, but with a technical clarity unique to the Sumerians. Understanding these layers clarifies how the soul recycling system functions. It is not just the death of the body, but an orchestrated breakdown of the psyche and memory engineered to reset the worker for rebirth. The soul's multiple parts behave differently, with some aspects returned to Earth and others trapped in the underworld's machinery. This complex division makes possible the system's control over human consciousness beyond physical demise. What follows naturally from this is exploring the structure of the underworld itself, where these layers of the self are processed, and where the true nature of the trap begins to show itself. The underworld's architecture. The Sumerian underworld, known as Kur or the Great Below, is portrayed not as a vague spiritual realm, but as a tangible, structured place with physical features. It has walls, gates, and administrators, resembling a highly organized facility rather than an abstract afterlife. Souls arrive here shortly after death, entering a holding zone where they maintain some residual awareness, although this awareness is limited and diminishing. Rather than immediate judgment or release, they become part of a system designed to process and prepare them for what comes next. At the heart of this underworld is a series of 7 gates, each guarded by a gatekeeper who enforces strict rules on those who pass. The gates serve as checkpoints where the soul is gradually stripped of identity and power, a process symbolized vividly in the story of Inanna's descent, where at each gate she loses clothing, jewelry, and other signs of authority. This removal represents the dismantling of layers of consciousness and personal history. The soul becomes increasingly vulnerable, moving toward a state of emptiness required for recycling back into the world of the living. The gatekeepers, like Nettie described in the texts, are not malevolent entities, but functionaries operating within an established system. Their role is to enforce the orderly degradation of identity so that the cyclical process can continue without interruption. This concept finds echoes beyond Mesopotamia. In Egyptian mythology, Anubis serves a similar custodial role, and in Tibetan beliefs, deities encountered in the Bardo state test and redirect consciousness after death. These parallels suggest a shared understanding of death's architecture as a system of control rather than mere symbolism. Beyond the gates lies distinct zones within the underworld, each serving a purpose. Near the surface lies the entry region where souls arrive freshly dead, still clinging to fragments of memory and selfhood. Deeper in the middle zone, the stripping process takes place under the watchful eyes of the gatekeepers. Finally, the deepest region is known as the Land of No Return, a place not reserved for the wicked, but the final destination for most souls. Here, memory and identity collapse almost entirely, extinguishing any chance of resistance to the cycle. The phrase, "land of no return," is usually understood metaphorically, implying that the dead do not come back to the living. Yet a more literal reinterpretation considers that what does not return is the consciousness itself. While the physical body might perish and remain lost, the system recycles the surviving consciousness, erased of all past selves, back into new forms. The no return is psychological, marking a point where the soul irrevocably loses its thread of continuity and becomes trapped in the cycle. What emerges is a chilling view of death not as liberation, but as enforced servitude beyond the grave. The unaware soul is methodically disassembled and readied for rebirth, where personal identity and memory are wiped clean. This design functions perfectly as a system of control, preventing collective awareness or rebellion across lifetimes. There is a cold logic behind the underworld's architecture, ensuring humans remain in cycles, their consciousness confined to roles assigned by a higher authority. The process of memory erasure at each stage reveals the trap hidden within the cycle of death and rebirth. At the center of this ancient system is the idea of memory and identity being erased after death. According to these interpretations, the soul does not simply move to another realm, but enters a process where layers of consciousness are removed until the individual forgets who they were, where they came from, and that the cycle exists at all. This forgetting serves as the foundation of the trap. A soul that returns without memories cannot question, resist, or seek escape. The process becomes a reset, sending individuals back into existence unaware of previous experiences and unable to recognize the repetition. Similar ideas appear across various traditions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the danger of losing awareness as consciousness dissolves after death. Egyptian teachings provide instructions for preserving the self while navigating the afterlife. The Vedic concept of samsara portrays existence as a repeating cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, from which liberation is difficult to achieve. Gnostic texts describe a related belief, portraying souls as divine sparks trapped in a material world controlled by forces that prevent awakening. These traditions share a common theme. The greatest obstacle is not death itself. Inanna's journey through the seven gates symbolizes this stripping away of identity, as each layer of herself is removed until nothing remains. The lesson is that escape requires awareness during the process, rather than resistance or fear. The ancient teachings suggest that understanding the mechanism of forgetting is the first step toward breaking it. Liberation comes from maintaining consciousness, recognizing the cycle, and moving through death without losing the awareness of the true self. With that hope in mind, the final sections will examine the ancient knowledge offering a way out, and why it has remained secret for so long. The path to escape. Ancient texts suggest that escaping the cycle of soul recycling requires more than simply passing through death. It demands preparation, knowledge, and awareness maintained during the final moments of consciousness. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this moment as the recognition of the clear light of death, when the true nature of consciousness briefly appears. If the dying person can recognize and remain aware during this experience, they may break free from the cycle instead of falling back into unconsciousness and rebirth. Gnostic traditions describe a similar idea through gnosis, a direct realization of the soul's true nature. They believed that without this knowledge, souls remain trapped in ignorance, repeatedly returning without memory. Egyptian teachings in the Book of Coming Forth by Day also provided guidance for navigating the afterlife while preserving awareness. Across these traditions, the message is consistent. Life itself is the preparation. Awakening, presence, and freedom from ego are developed long before death. Inanna's descent through the 7 gates symbolizes this process as she willingly releases each layer of identity and emerges transformed. Esoteric teachings later connected this hidden knowledge to figures like Enki, who was believed to have provided a path of liberation to those prepared to receive it. Whether viewed as myth or spiritual metaphor, these traditions share one powerful idea. Death is not merely an ending, but a final test of awareness. The ultimate challenge is maintaining consciousness when everything familiar is taken away. The ancient Sumerian tablet reveals a death beyond endings, a system designed for recycling souls without memory, a trap few understand. But hidden within this knowledge lies a difficult path of awareness, a chance to break free from endless cycles. What you do with this information matters. If this story challenges your view, like and subscribe for more explorations of forgotten histories that might change everything you thought you knew.